Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much again for tuning in, for liking and subscribing, and just being a part of the journey to racial reconciliation and just understanding race as a whole and how we can each play a part to make this thing better, how we can talk to our families and our friends and intervene when things happen and just be able to communicate about these hard topics. Obviously, this being race. So today, I want to talk about Jonathan Price and systemic racism. If you haven't heard the story of Jonathan Price, he was a 31-year-old in Texas, and he was breaking up a domestic dispute. He was just there and was obviously trying to create peace, wanting to break it up. For some reason, this officer saw Jonathan as a threat and tased him. And Jonathan convulsed in a way that I guess the officer felt threatened when he was on the ground being tased and decided to shoot him 4 times in the chest. Now, this officer was arrested and fired, and he was charged with the shooting that happened to Jonathan Price. But there's a few things that I just want to touch on when it comes to this. I know maybe not a lot of people have heard of it. So I want to say this happened this week. A 31-year-old black man who was shot by an officer. This is incredibly heartbreaking. I think one of the most, to me, heartbreaking things about it is that Jonathan he didn't like the Black Lives Matter movement. He didn't like, which obviously is to fight police brutality. He was extremely supportive of the police force. I don't think that saying that Black Lives Matter and being a part of the fight against police brutality and supporting police should be pinned up against each other. I think those things are not mutually exclusive. That you can support police officers and you don't have to combat. People are saying, it's like, hey, don't kill people that are unarmed. And it's like, Blue Lives Matter. And you're like, but never said that. I was just saying that police brutality is bad, And so Jonathan was a huge advocate for police brutality. And like I said, he did not like Black Lives Matter. But this officer saw him as a threat. It's just really sad that his life was cut short. He was a coach. He obviously was trying to intervene this situation. He was never violent, not at any point towards the officer or anyone at all. He was just trying to bring peace to the situation that was happening between these two people. And according to some reports, witnesses say that the situation was resolved actually before the police gotten there, that everything had calmed down, that they didn't really see a reason at all why this officer decided to not only tase, but to shoot and kill Jonathan. So actually, when the officer arrived to the store, Jonathan actually greeted the officer, asked him how he was doing, and the officer still saw him as a threat. The thing about systemic racism is that it is a system. It is embedded into our society. I think that people confuse systemic racism with like regular racism or just people being just racist words. And it's very different than that. Systemic racism is when you have an entire entity like our government officials, state officials, that are working against you. Perfect example, like I talk about quite a bit, is redlining, where you have neighborhoods that were redlined and they were only black families and black people were only allowed to buy homes in certain areas. This is why today you see predominantly black and predominantly white neighborhoods, and why those predominantly black neighborhood schools are underfunded. And if you go into a predominantly white area, those schools have great funding. The property taxes are higher in those areas. In predominantly black neighborhoods, the property taxes are lower. That is based on systemic racism. Redlining, something like redlining, which is illegal now, which an act had to be passed for it to be illegal, still affects us today. It's still embedded into our system. The reason this officer, I don't know, but I'm going to assume the reason this officer saw Jonathan Price as some sort of threat is because of a bias, a systemic oppression and bias that is created within our society. I know a lot of people may not agree with that, but he saw a black man and saw a threat. And before you go off on me, this is just embedded into our society, right? If you see, sometimes people, it's happened to me before, where people will look at me and tell me, oh, your English is great. My English is good. Actually, my English is just standard. It's just our standard English that we have, that we usually talk. There's no proper or improper English in a sense. What people would deem as improper is African American vernacular English, which is where you get things like people saying ax instead of ask, or people speaking like, oh, you good? Well, I could say you good in different tones and it means different things, where people get words like period or finna instead of going to, hey, you finna go to the store? Hey, are you going to go to the store? Things like that. That's where we get those things. It doesn't make it invalid. It just makes it different. And so you have standard American English, and then you have African American vernacular English, and it's not that either one is proper or improper. It's just that they're different. And so it is embedded into our society where we can perceive Black people as a certain way based on how we're presented. Black people have to, in a sense, prove their worthiness to society based on how they appear. Because you have things that are created like our media, our society, our government, where these implicit biases are ingrained inside of these entities, and they really just bleed over into our everyday lives, which I think really happened in this case with this officer and Jonathan Price, where he was breaking up a fight, doing what he was supposed to do, and then the officer perceived Jonathan as a threat, even after Jonathan had even spoke to the officer and asked him if he was okay. Things like Black Lives Matter and police brutality, people will mention, that white people are killed more at a higher rate. There's a few things to consider. Police brutality is not just police shootings. Yes, it is a part of it, but it's not just police shootings. Black people have a higher chance of being pulled over in the daytime. Those chances lower at night. Now, we could just say these are just something about the nighttime. I don't know. What my personal opinion is that you can't really see at night, so you really don't know who's driving the car. You can see in the daytime. The perception of Black people, it causes things like this. Senseless, murders and shootings of people that are in authority, that are supposed to protect and serve us, and that are supposed to help us. And a lot of times, like in Jonathan's case, he was helping them or trying to help them, and he obviously had a great respect for officers, and he was extremely vocal about it. And ultimately, it didn't matter, It's just really sad about this instance with Jonathan. It goes to show how the media works, because a lot of people haven't heard. I'm sure there's going to be people that watch this that didn't even know the situation happened. I'll make sure I put some articles in the description box, but that didn't even know that this Jonathan Price situation had even occurred. This guy who is supportive of officers, who is against something like Black Lives Matter, who would actually, unfortunately, benefit him in his death, and fight for him in his death, because he was just unjustly and wrongfully killed by a police officer, just for absolutely no reason, based solely on the fact that he was perceived as a threat. My thoughts and prayers go to his family. It's just incredibly heartbreaking and honestly so scary for me, because I know that, if my husband saw something like that happening, a dispute between two people, he would try to break it up. He would try to be civil and bring peace. And it's just disheartening knowing that someone who obviously, wasn't even doing anything, any crime or anything at that time, nothing that people would combat. He was doing nothing that people would fight up against or give an excuse as to why he was killed. He was doing none of those things. He was a coach. He was beloved by his community, and he was still murdered by the police. It's just sad. And like I said, my hearts and my thoughts, my prayers go out to his family. I pray that Jonathan does get justice. So thank you guys so much again for watching. I do appreciate it again. I love you guys. You're awesome. And I can't wait to see you next time. Thank you again for just subscribing and liking my channel. And I hope you have a great rest of your week. Bless you. Bye. Love you guys. Bye.